Hello, everyone. This is Ken Quigley from Keystroke. This event is going to be recorded. I have disabled everyone's everyone's camera, but I'm leaving the mics open in case you have any questions. This is going to be relatively free form. Want to go through a couple of things because what we're going to be doing is covering one feature in particular, but I want to cover what's going to be happening over the course of September as it relates to Act V27. Okay, so the first thing is Act V27 is scheduled for a soft release on September 23rd. Okay, it was scheduled for next week initially, but they had to build in support for a toggle for the mail merge technology, which I'll get into in subsequent weeks. So just to allow additional support time for that, so people can choose which one they want to use, they delayed it a little bit. Okay. The soft release, so if you go to act.com/downloads, that download should be available on the 18th. Again, this is as it's currently scheduled. I can't control whether or not it will, but that's the current plan. V27 will not be schema breaking. Okay, there is nothing in this version that would even require schema breaking, and we've gone to some minor steps to avoid even the slightest need for that. And I'll get into that in a bit. The default installation of SQL with this version will be SQL 2022, but upgrades of 2017. That was my typo, which my marketing guy was tripped up by. Okay, 2019 will be left in place. Okay, so if you're installing over top of, let's say, 25 or 26, it's going to respect the fact that you've got 2019 in place and leave that in place, as opposed to what 26 did with SQL 2014. It literally required you to uninstall it. So the default installation, if you don't have any ACT or SQL, will be installed as 2022, but otherwise upgrades will leave 2019 in place. As I said, the mail merge technology will be updated, but the user will be able to choose which version they want, because quite frankly, the mail merge in the desktop isn't broken in the same way it is with web. So they wanted to kind of not cause any heartburn for people that aren't suffering any pain, but for people that are on APC or on Act Advantage and they want to switch to the new mail merge, which is available right now if you email customer success at act.com with the account number and request that feature to be enabled, you can get the new mail merge. I will tell you, don't fall in love or get alarmed with the current UI that is being updated in the coming weeks, and it will look a lot more like other workflows. Okay, but the functionality, the ability to support Office 365 and Gmail using open authentication, all of that is in place. Okay, and that will be able to that's accessible right now. Now, for the people that are in a mixed environment with web and Windows, they will be able, with V27, to have the choice of saying, you know what, I'm going to use the same mail merge technology. I will be converting all my templates, and I will be only updating one template format. So that's something to advise your customers of. Okay. Now, as for the training schedule, so today, we're going to be covering Primary Contact Plus. Next week, we're on the same bat time, same bat place. We'll be covering list lookup and append to field. I'm not going to get into those, but I will tell you a lot of people, especially on this call, are thoroughly going to enjoy list lookup because I know a lot of people download the welcome kit to use that multi lookup field. So let's say you get a whole whack of bounced emails and you want to look them up in ACT. There isn't any way to do that natively within ACT. This will be supported by just pasting in the list and it will look them all up. Okay, and that feature is actually if you've downloaded the welcome kit in the past, this one is even simpler and it has more operator, so it's a little bit more flexible, and I'll get into that next week. Opdater, user activity deleter. I will tell you, user activity deleter, I'm putting near the end because it may get pulled. There is an issue we're investigating with the SDK where it works on the master database, but it doesn't work on RDBs, and obviously in a sync environment with all APC users and ActiveVantage, that would be problematic. And the final thing we'll cover on the 19th is mail merge, so we'll be able to wrap that up before the official launch the following week. And then Keystroke is having a public webinar on all new features, and which will kind of be an amalgamation of everything we're covering today, obviously in less of a technical format, because I don't want to put people to sleep that are just general users, but it will allow them to appreciate what features are now available. Okay. Now, before I get into this, because I know I'm going to be asked, these are strictly SDK add-ons. So they're plugins. They will work only with the desktop. I can assure you, anyone that's going to ask me, oh, when will these be in web? Never. Okay. Or at least not in the foreseeable future. So these are strictly desktop enhancers and nothing else. There's no plan whatsoever to create feature parity in the web with these. Okay. Okay, so on to Primary Contact Plus. Okay, so what I've done for today, because we're going to be using production data, but for the sake of privacy, I wanted to use an old customer of ours that hasn't subscribed in quite some time, and I found out recently has gone bankrupt, so I'm sure they won't have any objection to me sharing some of this. Okay. So here is the company information. Now, let me just kind of back up and explain what all of this does. So Primary Contact Plus was developed by us many years ago because ACT users are generally contact centric. I think you can imagine all of your customers, they do all of their field updates, their notes, and everything else at the contact level. Okay. So what this means is most data is generally recorded in the contact fields and not the company fields. So as you can see, this is a dynamically linked company. The problem with this practice for ACT users is that the linked companies only transfer data from the company down to the contact and not the other way around. So, if we are at the company level and we make a change here, we all know it's going to prompt us to say, do you want to update the linked fields? Well, that is a downward data transfer, and that often will take the old data here, because we don't typically update account level information, and copy it down to the contacts. So we run the risk of having old data overwriting better data. Okay. The other issue is, despite having numerous linked contacts in a company, there tends to be only one decision maker, which is often the contact we work with the most. Okay. If we're updating one record more than the others, over time, the data at the company level, as well as the other linked contacts, becomes increasingly out of date. So if I were to go here, just do a quick look up for contacts. Okay. The primary contact is Mark here. Okay. You can see there's 10 licenses here. The renewal date I've changed to next year. Okay. I've changed the address slightly. Okay. And if we go through here, we can see that the address, the numbers, the dates here are all different. Now, for the sake of this demo, let me just point out that all of these fields over here are linked. Okay. In our layout, we've actually specified by the green color here which ones are linked. Okay. So we can see here, you can see the discrepancies on each one of these. Okay. So what we want is, like, let's say I was often working with Mark, I would be updating his record with subscription-based information, ticketing information, things like that most often. So his contact fields increasingly over time became much more current and different than everyone else linked in the company. Okay. Currently, in order to fix this, as we all know, we would have to copy all of this information field by field, okay, and then paste it at the company level, and then say, okay, update fields and have it paste all down. As you can imagine, the more fields that are linked, the more tedious and time consuming that this would become, which generally, as you might guess, mean it's not going to get done. Okay. So we've got that. And then the final thing, the final part of this problem is that, and I'm just going to go to support contracts here because we're obviously heavy users of custom tables. Okay, so we record all of our custom table, all of our support contracts, subscriptions, software, service, things like that. So you can see here that I've got 5 custom tables here representing 5 different support contracts. But if I go here, I could see there's 1. Okay, and under Kevin, I created 1 additional one. And under Sean, there's none. Now, why am I pointing that out? The reason is, like, let's say that I look at this and I say, okay, all of his support tickets are closed. He's got to go buy more support. Well, Kevin has got an active one. Okay, so immediately I would get an incorrect impression of what their support eligibility was. Okay, so one of the things that we had a problem with was that we would often have important account-related information spread across different contacts. Okay, and depending on when those custom tables were made, before or after the company was linked, okay, they may not roll up to the company level if I wanted to click on that. Okay, so this became a problem where even if I assigned a primary contact, I wouldn't necessarily have all the data aggregated under one contact, so that essentially I would have company level views insofar as the custom tables were concerned at the primary contact level, and I wouldn't have to constantly pivot back up. Okay, now that may seem like an edge case, but here's one that isn't. Let's say that I keep everything under Mark's contact and then Mark leaves the company. Okay, the process for me to migrate all of these custom tables and everything over to another contact is tedious. I would have to do it one at a time. I'd have to right click, reassign, so on and so forth. Wouldn't it be nice if I can just create a new contact from the company, okay, and then assign them once it's current, once assign them to be primary contact, and then all of the custom tables get aggregated under them. Okay, and that's precisely what happens, okay, with Primary Contact Plus. So Primary Contact Plus solves all of those problems. And we know, with ACT being a contact-centric program, it is often very hard for people that come from much more account-based CRMs to convince them of the CRM capabilities of ACT when it's not really meant to effectively transfer information back and forth and provide you the account-based visibility that you might otherwise get. This solves a lot of those problems. Okay, is it going to make everyone come screaming out of the woods and make everyone bring everyone to their happy ACT place? Probably not. But for customers that are looking for that enhanced functionality, that enhanced data exchange between contacts and companies, I think they're going to find quite a bit of relief with this. Okay, so I've got to be careful. I can't demo too much because I can't reverse it. So I'm going to explain, and then we're going to go through and see how it works. So when you click on primary contact here, okay, it's going to say, do you wish to reassign all the records? I'm going to just click on, I can't now. Okay, so say, okay. So he has been marked as the primary, okay. What I'm going to do is, what it will do is if I click on that, and I don't know how it's going to be surfaced within V27, okay, but it will be surfaced within V27. I think it should be relatively similar, but I haven't seen the final UI, okay. But when I click on that, if this is not a dynamically linked company, it will make it one. Okay, so you will automatically have it as a linked company. Okay, if it's already a linked company, then it will immediately copy all the linked field information here up to the contacts, or up to the company, I should say. So as I said before, there's no native data transfer from the contact to the company level other than when you do that initial company creation. This will allow you to send updates up to the company, okay, based on the most recent information. And then what it will do is it will take that and it will copy it all in one step back down to all of the linked contacts. So you've gone from copying and pasting and then running the updates to being able to click on one button and it will do everything at once. Okay, so that's a big time saver. Suddenly, you're going to have everything disparate. So you can see here, I'm just going to click on here, primary contact. Okay, now he's marked as the primary. Okay, now you'll notice that we have a primary checkbox here, which this program uses. With V27, remember I said that this program isn't schema breaking. One of the things that we did to avoid the need for a schema break, which involves just even adding a field, was to repurpose the favorites checkbox. Okay, all of us remember, I think it was version 17 that came out with the checkbox feature, or sorry, the favorite feature. Sorry, let me just got something going on here. The favorites feature, which wasn't much of a feature outside of the checkbox and the lookup capabilities. We are repurposing that for the primary contact tool. So it will now, instead of using this and creating a checkbox, it's going to use this. Now, I talked to the team about, will that overwrite, favorite data that's in there? Well, considering it only does one company at a time, I think we all agreed it would be, even if it did overwrite data, one company at a time, it was relatively low impact. Okay, so now what's happened is, if I had any other contact in this company that was listed as the primary, they would then be deselected. In V27, that would apply to the favorite checkbox. Okay. Now, what it's also done is it has aggregated all of the custom table data. So you remember how Kevin had a support contract and Bindu had a support contract? Now they're all aggregated under Mark. Okay. And in addition to that, if they weren't linked to the company, I'm giving hand gestures if you guys can see this. If they weren't linked to the company, they now will all roll up to the company. So what you've got is all of the linked fields have been updated based on the primary contact to the company. All the linked contacts have been updated, and the primary contact is now that one-stop shop where you can see all of the account-based custom tables aggregated in one place. Okay. Now, let's see. So we use favorite checkbox. Yeah, and like I said, we're not worried about really, favorite information or favorite checkboxes being wiped out. But think about it. If people go to the trouble of really updating their database, then there's going to be one primary contact for all the companies in there. So they'll be able to go into preferences, okay, and start up, okay, use favorites as default lookup, okay, and they can actually focus right on the primary contacts for all of their accounts. Now it's going to take a little bit to set up initially, okay, but it'll be handy that they are, the second that they launch Act, then their most important contacts will be displayed. Okay. Okay, so the one other thing, relatively minor at this point, is that there is a settings options. Now, again, I'm assuming that it's going to be surfaced under tools, but if you go to primary tools and then primary contact plus settings, let's take a look at some of the configurable options. Copy record manager from the primary contact to all contacts in the company. This is deselected by default if some of you guys are recoiling in horror at the prospect of that much data being updated. This is deselected, but if for any reason people like to have that, okay, then they can do so, okay? Toolbar captions, again, it's just UI stuff. If you want to say primary contact, you want to say something else, whatever. The other thing that we thought of is as it's aggregating custom tables, there might be some custom tables that need to stay where they are, okay? So for instance, HHC, the HHC records that we have is user-based, not company-based. So we would probably want those to stay under a particular user and not be aggregated under the primary contact, who may or may not even be using HHC, and that particular user may pay for it directly himself. Service tickets, service we wanted to leave where it was because we may often work with a particular user, not just at the company level. So we left that where it was. But the support contracts, software, things like that, we left all that in place so that it would aggregate appropriately as if the contact was meant to contain all the company information. Okay, so as you can tell, like there's quite a bit of meat there in terms of efficiencies, a lot of data cleanup, a lot of batch functions, and that's really what you're going to see in the coming weeks. Is you're going to see an enhancement in a lot of batch update capabilities, okay, which we can obviously communicate to our customers are big productivity enhancers, time savers, whatever you wish to call it, okay? So let me just pause. I've covered largely what I wanted to do in this, but let's open up the room for some questions.
Quick question. So once you upload everything to the company level, what happens if somebody other than Mark calls in and you do a quote for them? Does everything have to be quoted through Mark then, or how do we handle that?
Good question. So all this, keep in mind that this is not meant to limit you in any way. This is meant to keep your data up to date and uniform, okay? But if you wish to, because you'll notice that, I didn't aggregate the opportunities, okay? We deliberately didn't aggregate the opportunities, even though those roll up, obviously, to the company level, but that's a fairly mature feature within ACT, so we didn't really have to touch that. So if you wanted to quote, say, Kevin Robinson, okay, you can do so, but the beauty is it's going to reflect the current address, it's going to reflect the current renewal date, the address, so all of the information that you might use to prepare a quote, okay, will be in front of you and accurate with Kevin. But you can create a quote and the opportunity will roll up under Kevin just as it always has. Okay, and then also under the company level. So it doesn't limit you in any way whatsoever.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay.
Good. Yep.
No, good question. Anyone else?
Ken?
Yes, I could barely hear you. Who is it?
It's Karen. Sorry. Can you hear
Hey,
me?
Karen.
So,
First time caller, long time listener?
yeah, I'll try to speak now. So is there a way to turn off the copying of the company information to the other records or the company records?
So, okay. And I had a similar question from Cynthia, and Cynthia's on this call, so I hope she's embarrassed by this, but it's a valid question. And I'm just, can you mute yourself, Karen, or I'll have to? Okay, just because there's a bit of background noise. Now, if you couldn't hear Karen, she's very shy. She's a Patriots fan, so she probably doesn't want to be noticed. But the question that she's asked is similar to Cynthia. Is, what if you don't want that information copied up? Okay, well, there is absolutely nothing to say, okay, well, I'm not going to use linked companies. Okay, linked companies in that case, if all of the linked contacts have dramatically disparate information by intent, then that may not be a useful feature for you any more than the Primary Contact Plus would be a useful feature for you. And if you similarly wanted to, were concerned about maybe there's several different sub companies, then obviously if we're worried, let's use Scottsdale versus Newcastle, for instance. If you want to, put in one company in ACT saying ACT, and then having the Newcastle and the Scottsdale divisions, then obviously you can have the address information, specific address information stored under those respective divisions. And then it would only update the appropriate linked contacts to those divisions. But aside from that, which has obviously always existed, if people are really worried about the data issue, okay, and I would gently suggest that this would be a concern with or without Primary Contact Plus. If they were worried about preserving disparate information across a bunch of linked contacts, then it's probably not worth the risk of having them as linked contacts. Okay. And what I would suggest in that case is, having some of your contacts linked that you would want to have that updated, and have the rest of them just grouped under the contact without having those fields, that field linking enabled. Hope that makes sense. Okay.
Ken,
Yes,
can you hear me any better?
I can hear you perfectly now.
Okay. So I just was at that one screen that you showed where you can choose which custom tables you want to aggregate.
Mm-hmm. That's
Um,
under tools.
yeah, I was
Tools.
just going to make a suggestion that maybe exclude gets bolded.
I don't see why not. I can tell you there will be no changes between now and the 23rd, even a bolt. I tried to take advantage of the 2-week break or the 2-week delay in release and make one small change, and I was frog marched out of the room. They have no tolerance at all for any last minute changes.
I have customers that don't read carefully, so that's why I make the suggestion. I understand.
And I'm not disputing it. I'm just trying to control expectations that I've kind of reached the limit of my influence in terms of how much more can be changed. Any other questions?
Hey, Ken, I texted you a message or chatted to the chat.
Okay. I apologize. My mouse is very sticky here. Okay. Okay, is this feature only related to custom tables? I see that you're demonstrating the tables, but I see if you are showing a feature that works on content. Yeah, so all the features I showed at the beginning related to the linked contact and company fields. So the custom tables is additional. So that aggregation of custom tables under the primary contact is additional to the upwards, making sure that you can take one contact with the most current information, copy it up to the company, which there's no native support for in ACT prior to V27, okay, and then automatically update down all the linked companies. And the one other feature is that it will deselect any other primary contacts or any other favorites in favor of having one. Okay. So that.
So that's what you're saying. We are selecting a primary, but then
Mhm.
we're able to roll up. For example, I just had a customer, but they're on cloud,
Right.
and they do have a sync database.
Yep. Then that
So,
would work.
so I'll just do it on the sync, and we can clean up all their data. We just moved everything, or populated all of their contacts with multiple fields that are linked to the company. But like you said, there's no way to move that data now to the company.
No, and it's very frustrating if you've got we have a lot of linked fields, and having to, like, if there are 7 or 8 of them to update, because you can't really do it in a split screen, it gets pretty tedious, which means that, as you might guess, it doesn't tend to get done very often.
So this only will affect the primary contact, not all the other contacts, because that
No,
comes down
completely
through.
incorrect. It takes the primary contact and it pushes the current linked field data up to the company, and then it will automatically update the same fields of all the linked contacts.
Gotcha. Perfect. That's what I need to know. Perfect.
Yep. So it's a real time saver. And guys, this is something that we gave to ACT because, quite frankly, it was never a big seller. But I think it's a bit admonish, if I can make up a word, to really get people overly excited about it. But I've always felt, and I'm sure everyone on this call has felt, that the contact company data exchange and the whole company management has always been a rather weak feature. Okay, and I think that this really enhances what are understood to be kind of core CRM functions. Okay, within ACT. Okay, and so this is something that I'll tell you I've literally used every single day for years. Okay, in our own account management, and it really lends to much cleaner and current data. But the one thing that I really love, if we've got a departing primary contact and I want to create a new contact, I can literally just say, okay, create the new contact, make him the primary, and suddenly everything gets aggregated under him, and the old guy can be marked as inactive, and we can move on, and we don't have to rewrite any histories or any, because the old practice, people would just, oh well, Bob's gone, let's just take Sally and overwrite the contact field, which buggers up data to no end. Okay, any other questions? Okay, great. I figured that we might have an hour or a half hour's worth of information in here, and that seems to have been sufficient. So I hope that this has been useful. Please tune in next week for the list lookup. I think you guys are going to love this feature because it's got a couple of hidden components like reverse lookups, which we have never been able to do. We've never been able to do batch lookups, but you'll be able to really easily you know, create powerful lookups that you couldn't otherwise. And it's funny, even John Klubnik was asking for, is there a feature that or an add-on that does batch updates of opportunities? There is. And we all know that we've got customers where we'll come in and we'll find thousands of open opportunities, okay, because they've just never cleaned up their pipeline, okay? And it becomes pretty much time prohibitive to do it in any other way. And this allows you to do lookups and batch update them and clean them up accordingly. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Hope you all have a great weekend, and I will publish in Act Nation the recording of this. Okay. Take care.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.